Today's guest on Only Human is Cassidy Emch. Cassidy and I met growing up together in Ohio, but nowadays she's living in California trying to make it as an actress. Cassidy has had multiple surgeries that have changed her appearance over the course of her life, including a cleft lip correction. I'm very grateful that Cassidy took the time to talk to me about what it was like to grow up and change with these surgeries. Enjoy the podcast. What event led to your biggest personal revelation?
What event led to my biggest personal revelation? I would say it was probably going to college, which kind of sounds dumb, but I only went to college for a semester. And I ended up going to Kent State, which so many people go to in our area. It was 20 minutes up the road. I only went there because I was not accepted into the three colleges that I applied to, which were NYU, USC, and Emerson University, which I think is in Boston. In hindsight, I'm glad I wasn't accepted. I guarantee you it was because of my grades. I'm not a bad student, but I didn't do well in the ACTs or whatever. But, so, I went to Kent. I dormed. I met some fantastic people that I'm still friends with today in 2021. And the thing that really just solidified my path in life, I suppose, is that I hated college. I literally hated it. It felt like I was living somebody else's life. It felt like I was on somebody else's life journey, I guess, because I never wanted to go to college, but I went because my mom wanted me to, and it was expected because all of my family members went, and everyone would always say, well, what's your backup plan for acting? And I'm like, there is no backup plan. There's never been a backup plan. I've wanted to do this since like I said before, since I remember remembering anything, it's been acting and singing. So it's, again, I really hated college. I would go home not most weekends. I guess it was most weekends towards the end of the semester because I was just done. I was done partying. I still would hang out with my friends, but I would go home and I would cry and just say, Mom, I can't do this anymore. I was in a very dark place, much darker than I've ever been. And I've been through some dark times. And there was a time in my life when I didn't think I would see 18. And then I saw 18. Then I saw 19. Things still weren't better. I was even more upset with myself that I hadn't done anything that I told myself I would. So I just made the decision to drop out and start working full time. And that was the moment when I was like, okay, this is it. This is where it gets real. And that's what I did. I dropped out. I started working full time January 14th of 2019. 2019? Incorrect. 2016. And then moved to California in 2018.
Okay. So there are two things that I want to say off the bat. One thing is that I think it's really cool that you said I felt like I was living someone else's path or living someone else's life. There is a extremely hard book that I can barely read called The Red Book by Carl Jung. And he talks about how if you feel like you're living someone else's life path, that you're not living your own. So I think that just came to mind. So if you ever get bored and you can try your best to read that book very hard, it sounds like it's right up your alley. And I think it would validate a lot of what you feel. The second thing is, why do you say, and I can figure why you might say so, but why did you say you were glad that you weren't accepted into those dream schools or your top 3 choices?
First and foremost, money. They're all very, very expensive. But also, had I gone, I would have felt like I was locked in because I applied to the theater programs, which when I went to Kent, I immediately changed to communications because you can't really do anything with the theater degree. It's fine. But had I been accepted, I would have been locked in because because they're such prestigious schools, I feel like if I left, what was the point of even making the effort? especially if I had gone to USC, which is a phenomenal school, especially for acting related things and creative arts. I just would have felt like more of a failure, I guess.
Okay. So there was a bigger investment, and if you were to fail at those, like the mental turmoil associated with that
Mhm.
would be much greater. All right, I
Mhm.
understand. So, do you think that your experience at Kent was unique to Kent? Like, if you didn't meet those people, if you weren't so close to home, that those things wouldn't, like that, you dropping out and then you moving to California wouldn't have happened if you went to another school.
It wouldn't have happened, but I don't know if it would have played out the way that it did.
Okay.
I had a fantastic support system in, like my mother when I went to Kent, and had I been out of state, I couldn't have gone and cried to her every weekend. It would have been over the phone, and that's not the face-to-face contact that you need.
So,
And I've been also very, very blessed with the friends that I made. They're all super supportive, and as someone who hasn't had a lot of support in friendships growing up, uh, that was something that was really, really important and special for me.
okay. Now this is sort of a jump ahead, and
Mhm.
I do want to go back a little bit after the fact. But do you think that, like with your personality, that what you're currently doing was an inevitability? Like you would have always ended up here?
You mean acting or
Yeah,
California?
I would say. I mean, both really, but like I think acting, I guess more so. Like, did you think that it was like all paths would have led to where you are now, based off your?
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
Like I said, it's always been what I wanted to do. I've wanted to do it forever. I wanted to move to LA when I was younger, but obviously because I needed so many surgeries and medical things, it wasn't really an option. So it's being here feels like I'm finally home. I never felt like I was at home in Ohio, not once. No
okay,
matter which house I lived in, which school I went to, which group of friends I had, I was never home. I'm home here.
okay. So going back to what you originally said, talk about how you want to make it to 18. Um, can you basically walk me through what that was like? I guess transitioning out of Hudson into, um, basically when you transferred. Like, what were there any changes? Can you describe the changes like during that time?
All right. So I was raised in Hudson. I went there from preschool to part of freshman year of high school. The friends that I did have were there, and I was comfortable. I was not great mentally ever. I was diagnosed with the majority of my problems when I was 8, and I've been on medications for that since.
Wait, hold up. 8 years
Um,
old?
8, yeah. And then I was diagnosed with my most recent in 2017, I think.
Did you mean? Forgive me of asking if this is too much, but like physical or mental problems at 8 years old?
Mental.
At 8 years old.
Uh-huh.
All right,
I've been on
interesting. I'm just saying
medication
that
since
I
I
want
was
to.
8.
Okay, all right. I understand. All right, I'm sorry. Continue.
You're fine. So, obviously, having been diagnosed with a variety of mental problems at 8, growing up was hard, and then leaving Hudson was worse, or it made things worse. People were telling me before I left, like, "Oh, Streetsboro's like this. They don't even have doors on the bathrooms." And I was like, "You're gonna get beat up. You shouldn't tell anyone you're from Hudson." The things that I were told, they weren't true, but I was so caught up in my own pity party that I couldn't see past it. I hated everyone. I hated myself. I hated the world. I was mad all the time. And that didn't change really until junior year.
Okay. Um. Okay. There's two things, and they're both kind of like big topics. So, tell me which one you'd rather talk about. Or if you want to talk about either of them. The first one is that I want to know what it was like to receive those labels, like with those diagnoses at 8 years old. A, And then B, I want you to like like if you want to reflect on you said, I don't know, I don't remember exactly what you said, but you said something about how like you didn't want to be there, so you basically were in like a self-fulfilling prophecy about how you wouldn't welcome anything new in, right? Did I understand that correctly? Welcome any good things in?
Yeah, I
Okay.
suppose.
Okay. So do either of those topics, are they something that you're down?
We can do both
Okay, yeah.
or either. I don't really care.
Yeah, start with the 8 years old one, cuz that seriously blows my mind.
Really?
Yeah, cuz like it even blows my mind when I hear someone saying that they started like on Adderall in middle school, and I'm like, you've been taking Adderall like every single day since middle school. Like how does that even feel? So the fact that you say 8 years old and like if you're prescribed something like that, really like that's something.
Oh, well, when you're 8 years old, you don't really understand too much. You get it. You're not dumb. But
Right?
when a doctor when a doctor tells you you have anxiety, separation anxiety, OCD, depression, you're like, I'm 8.
Yeah, like
I
what?
can't even like so you don't really get it, but you know it's what you're feeling, so you finally have a name for that, which is nice
Mm,
because I mean, growing up when you feel a certain way, but you don't know what it is, you're just kind of like, okay, I guess this is my new normal. And I wondered why, even as young as 8, certain relationships that I had with my friends fell through, or why I felt a certain way. But when I voiced those things, even at 8, people didn't understand what I was talking about. So when I went, my mom took me to therapy because I had really bad separation anxiety. I would cry every day at school, and it would get so bad that I would literally make myself sick.
oh
So
wow.
that was good. I got that resolved. I'm very independent now. I can be away from my mother and be completely fine. I had to have a picture of my mother, me, and my brother at Disney World in my little card pocket at the top of my desk. I would get
Wait, how
yelled
old
at.
were you? What grade?
First grade.
Dude, I had to also have a picture of my family in first grade too.
So I mean, yeah, the labels I guess never really bothered me because I don't know, they just never bothered me. They don't bother me now. It's part of who I am as a person. It doesn't make me any less of a person. I I guess I just didn't think about the labels growing up because they weren't important. I just remembered to take my medication every day, remembered that I still wasn't great, but I was better, and prayed that it would figure itself out as I got older.
So it seemed like almost that you were validated when like you got those almost, which seems like the opposite of what I would expect.
Yeah, because again, you feel things that you don't understand. You don't know what's the name for or what is sorry. Um as I was saying, yes, it is validating because you feel all these things, you don't have a name for it, but when someone tells you you're fine, everything you're feeling is normal, it's just an imbalance of chemicals in your brain. Here's a pill that should help you. If it doesn't, tell me, we'll try again.
Hmm.
And it's a weight lifted. And it's the same feeling that I felt throughout my life when I've had a medical issue and there's been no cause for it, but you want there to be something wrong because then you can treat it,
I
if that
see.
makes sense.
It
So it's
definitely does.
the fact that there's treatment, even if it's not as effective as you want, was fantastic, even as a child.
Okay. So yeah, I think it's also pretty wild that you were so like you were able to view your friendships and like question why they turned out and fell through. Like that's pretty amazing for a young kid. So like, I can definitely see how that would have drove you like wild, because like as when I was
Mhm.
that age I thought about Yu-Gi-Oh, like that's it.
Oh,
So
but I was also like, well,
okay, so yeah, that's wild. So okay, going up to, I'm trying to think of like the first time that we had a class together. I think it was like 7th grade. So in 7th grade, I mean middle school blew for everyone, like don't get me wrong, but
hmm
in 7th grade, like I don't know, it's kind of a weird question because middle school sucked for everyone. I should say, like, can you, so going back to, let me actually move forward a little bit. So
sure.
freshman year, going into sophomore year, that's when you had your what I thought was your first surgery. So can you explain to me how like your mental health was, your like self perception was leading into it, what
Mhm.
happened, and then how you adjusted?
Right. So, sense of self, mental health, self confidence, self image, all time low, been low. And the fact that I was finally getting the big surgery, the surgery that everything has been leading up to, the penultimate, because I then had to have a revision, besides the point, was one of the best feelings because it means that I was one step closer to being who I thought I was supposed to be at birth
Mm.
because you're born with a birth defect. You're not how you're supposed to look. And that was something that I was striving for because I was always so bitter and thought, why was I born with a cleft? Why was it me? And so I was thrilled. I was scared because it's a double jaw surgery. Um y- and it's right after it was awful and I was still very nervous because you don't know how it's going to go. And you look a certain way until you're, you know, I think I was 15 or 16 and to then wake up, your face is all swollen. Like they saw through your top jaw, they break your bottom jaw and
Jesus.
fix it and then screw it in place. So you're obviously very, very swollen afterwards. And that swelling lasted for probably up to 6 months. So I couldn't even really see the benefits until that point, which was upsetting because I was so ready to be pretty. That was the thing. I wanted to be pretty. I wanted that validation because I never got it growing up. I always looked weird. I was made fun of for things that I had no control over. So I wanted that validation. I wanted to feel confident. And as the swelling finally died down, which was towards the end of sophomore year, I my life sort of kind of changed. I was more confident in myself. I was exercising more. I lost a bunch of excess baby weight that lasted until I was like 16. It's fine. And I was feeling better. Not perfect, but a lot better than I did because I looked like a person, which is bad to say. But again, when you grow up different from everybody else, you want to look like everybody else.
When you had that surgery, did you feel like your birth defect was corrected and you were no longer someone who was different? Or was that always still in the back of your mind even after the healing phase?
It's going to be different. And I know that. Even now, I still have scars on my nose. I have scars on my lip. And my face isn't, I don't want to say it doesn't look like other faces, but the features are still different. It's flatter in some areas. My nose is uneven in some spots, and that can never be corrected because I literally don't have enough cartilage there
Hmm.
because I've had so many nose surgeries. There's
Oh
not enough
shit.
cartilage. Um, and like I said, I still have the scars. I still have, you know, to be honest, I can't feel this part of my mouth or part of my like lip and skin. This is still numb, and that's
Oh
never
shit.
going to come back.
So like
This
no
is from my
nerves.
Yeah, like I can feel gentle pressure and if I touch my lip I can kind of feel it, but for a jaw surgery they cut all the nerves. So I'm
Oh
never
wow.
going to get this quadrant of my face back.
Oh
So
wow.
that's a physical thing that I'll always have. And I'll always carry I hesitate to say trauma because I've been very, very blessed. I A lot of people can't even tell that I was born with a problem. So I'm very, very blessed. But I still hold that trauma. And I will always hold that trauma
Of course.
of growing up different. Does that answer your question?
It does. Okay, so like you have to live with that numbness, so it's like you get a constant reminder that like even though it's corrected, you were born this way. So like I want to know like do you think like I mean obviously you can grow to accept yourself, but like what do you think that looks like to you? Like full self-acceptance. Like
I
does it
don't
require like that to be fixed, or do you think like you can actually accept yourself?
I think it'll still take time. I'm still not who I want to be and who I think I'm supposed to be, even physically. There are still things physically that I want corrected or enhanced. There's, some um, cosmetic things. And I think that once those are done and I can finally, I don't know how to put it because I look good. I know I do. I am content with how I am now, but I'm not 100% satisfied with myself. And quite frankly, even if I get the other work done, I don't know if I ever will be. I
Hmm.
don't know if anyone is ever 100% satisfied with who they are or what they look like. Um, that's obviously exacerbated by a defect, but I don't know. I guess I don't think I'll ever be completely satisfied. And I think that's just something I have to live with
Okay.
because, I mean, I have a defect. It's never going to change, but eh.
So like I mean I'm glad that you brought that up with the defect part, because there is a certain amount of, like you said, there's like an insatiable like not craving but like that need. So like there's like is there gonna be like a X amount of surgeries that's gonna like fulfill that? And so like do you feel there was like a Cassian, like a parallel universe that could have accepted herself with no surgeries? Or do you think that there was like a certain threshold that had to be crossed?
If I think about it, in a parallel universe, Cassie would have been born with no birth defect. But
Got it.
if she were, there was definitely a threshold that had to be passed, even just out of medical necessity.
Hmm. Okay.
Because, uh, like, if I didn't have the bone graft, my jaw wouldn't be working properly.
Okay.
If I didn't have specific nose procedures done, I wouldn't be able to breathe sufficiently. And if I obviously didn't have the correction of my lip when I was a baby, I'd have two holes from
Hmm.
here to here. But there are some that were more cosmetic and ones that I didn't technically need, but I still needed them,
I hear you.
if that makes sense.
Are you spiritual? I guess I'll ask you that question first. Do you like view yourself as a spiritual person?
What? I'm not really religious, but I'm pretty spiritual, I guess.
Is there like a cosmic viewpoint of how you see the things that you've been through?
I used to not think there was. I used to think whatever power was up there was just a jackass. And I still kind of do. But I also know that I wouldn't be who I am without the defect. And
Okay.
saying defect makes me sound like a broken toy, but that's all right.
I was gonna say I
I
hate
like it.
saying it. I hate saying it,
It's
but
all
okay.
right. I love it. It's
Okay.
totally fine. I really don't mind. I don't know. There are times when I think that it was supposed to happen, and there are times when I think this is BS. I
Mm.
should have been. I'm a good person. Why'd this happen to me? And there are times when I wish it wasn't the case and I wish I was born, quote unquote normal. But then I'm like, with the career path that I'm on, I could inspire so many people
Mm.
because there are people like me. There are a lot of people that didn't have the same medical opportunities as me, that didn't have the money to get specific surgeries. And I want them to be able to see someone that's like them and represents them, even if it's like even Joaquin Phoenix, he had a cleft lip.
Oh, okay.
And seeing him, it's like, I get you. If you can do it, I can do it.
Right.
So
I think
That's
it's really
kind
cool
of
because like that's like your karma basically. Like you were born with that, and so now you're here. Like you, there's like a greater sense of purpose now that you're in acting. Like you basically just described it. Like if you weren't born with that, like okay, like this is gonna be a fucked up question because I'll just preface it by saying this. Like
go
there are
for
a
it.
lot of people who I know who they're like, you know, they'll talk about that like they just feel like they're in like the rat race and stuff, and like they don't have any underlying purpose because their life was like pretty standard from the jump, and like they went through the very standard like high school into college streamline, got like a decent paying job, and that's that. And so I shouldn't say there's a price to pay, but like there's a responsibility. Someone who was born normal, who wasn't, nothing was thrust upon them. There was no like burden or responsibility given to them at birth. Where like there's like a whole different sort of like journey where you have to go and find your own purpose. So like, do you
Mhm.
feel in a way that you were given your purpose like the moment you were born, or do you feel like you sort of integrated that into your purpose at a later, like you chose to make that a part of your purpose?
I would say that it more so integrated
Okay.
into my purpose. My purpose has always been acting. It's always been telling stories. It's always been making people feel things, which is what I want to do. Whether it's happiness, sadness, anger, I don't care if you hate what I'm in, at least you felt something. And being born with what I was and going through what I did, it's just an additional thing that I can bring to the table and that I can use to inspire other people. So it truly was an integration. I don't think it was anything predestined because, I mean, had I not gone into acting, had it not been my path, really wouldn't have done me much good having a cleft. You
Hmm.
know, like, oh, post on Instagram, be like, hey, I'm
That's interesting that you see it like
defected.
that. Hmm.
'Cause, I mean, like, if I, there were times when I'm like, I could be a zookeeper, but I don't want to be a zookeeper. If I were a zookeeper, like, who cares? You know, I'm not
Interesting.
special. But because it's always been acting for me,
Okay. I
then
see.
there's something else there.
Okay. Very interesting take. Okay. So, okay, now we're going to jump back to high school because like I
Mhm,
said before, like this is where um like middle school sucked for me for different reasons, and but like for me what I had, it was based off my decision making. Like I was
mhm.
like large cuz I overate. And so I want to talk about what did it feel like with the change of attention when you felt more confident. Did you get more attention before you became more confident? Like after the surgery? Because you know, you can like get more attention because you changed, but then you get more attention because on top of your change, you act more confident. You know what I mean? Like I feel
Mhm.
like that's an important distinction. So like, can you walk me through what it was like just to be like a teenager after that? Like romantic attention, like friends or attention from friends. Like how did your life change?
Kind of a loaded question, I suppose,
A little bit.
because it's not that I didn't have attention previous or prior to surgery.
Hmm.
I mean, like, it wasn't always great attention. I was made fun of a lot. The people I thought were friends were not my friends. That's a whole nother story. And transferring to Streetsboro, I was the new kid for, a year. Everyone was like, "Ooh, cool, shiny new toy." And then I wasn't because I was a huge asshole because I hated myself, I hated the world, I hated everyone else. I didn't want to be there.
Word.
But after my oh, sorry. After I kicked my chair. After my surgery and really getting more so into theater and songwriting, I was more confident. I felt appreciated and like I validated in my talents because I was around creative people,
Hmm.
which then led me to be more confident. I would talk more in class. I would talk back to people in class because I was like, why not? I why should I keep my mouth shut when you're acting like a fool? And so people would talk to me because of that. They would um, include me in conversations. There was this one kid who would always, bless his heart, I appreciate him now, even though he was super, super annoying back then. He would always try and include me. Sometimes I feel like it was, I don't know if it was out of pity. He was on the basketball team, so it's like, why are you actually doing this? He was a popular kid, but he would always try and talk to me. He'd be like, "Why don't you like me? Why don't like come on, hang out with me. If I asked you to prom, would you say yes?" I'm like, "No."
Uh,
But like that's stuff that didn't happen to me before. There were romantic occasions, I suppose. I never dated anybody because I just wasn't like into that, wasn't really there. But I did like, I mean, boys talk to me. Boys would say things. I had conversations. It's just the attention shifted from haha, you look weird to haha, you got nice legs.
okay.
So
Interesting.
don't ask.
Okay. Um. Okay. So did you feel? How did you feel knowing that? Like, I mean, okay. So would you say that the attention change was because of your confidence change? Like, would you say that was the crux of it, or would you say it was both?
Definitely both.
Okay.
Because looking at my middle school pictures to, even what I looked like junior year, I'm like, she got kind of hot.
Okay.
So it's definitely part looks, and I'm aware of that, and I don't really care because I'm like, that's fine with me. I had to glow up, and that's life. So
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna ask because I see a lot of people who talk about like when they lose weight and they get attention and they're like, I don't know if it's like a chip on their shoulder or something, but like they don't like it. They're like, well, why weren't you attracted to me when I was like this? And like, I don't know if this is something that like you've thought about, but like for me, when I think about it, I'm like, well, like that's just how it is. Like people just aren't attracted to that sort of thing because like in my case, like I just looked unhealthy. And so it's like that's just like a honest thing. So like now like when the new attention came, it was like this was expected and I don't feel bad about it. So it sounds like that's like you agree. Like it was just like
unfortunately, society sucks. There are ideals of beauty and handsomeness and attractiveness. Like you said, that's life. It's to be expected. If you, I don't want to say slim down because that's not, there's plenty of, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
you're not, anyway, but people like what they like. If I personally didn't find some kids attractive in middle school, which is weird to say as a kid, but I find them attractive now, or they're people that I found attractive in middle school and I don't think they're attractive now.
Mm-hmm.
It's people's tastes change, especially when you're younger, you're a kid.
Right.
You're told this person's cute because they're popular, but
That's true.
their personality is garbage,
Yeah.
And then I don't know, I don't really care. It's kind of an annoyance like, "Oh, you're nice to me. I have the same personality. You were just a jerk."
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also like, I can just ignore this person because their personality is the same. So I'm hot. You're a jerk. Who cares?
Okay, so when you see people who look different, do you have a greater sense of compassion for them and are you able to see past that, or do you see yourself judging people like, not to say like a normal human being, but like you were seeing them objectively and you're like, I'm just not attracted to that, you know what I mean?
I do think I'm more compassionate and I sympathize and understand. There are definitely people who have things worse than I do. And unfortunately, that's a fact of life. And we all make snap judgments. It can't be helped. It's human nature. I don't like that I do it sometimes, but it happens. And then I smack myself on the hand and say, what's wrong with you? And at the same time, if let's say there is something different about a person. If I'm not attracted to them, I'm not attracted to them. Whether it's because like you can't control if
Right.
you're attracted to somebody. And maybe you're not attracted at first, but then you start talking and their personality is golden and you're like, actually, like I think you're pretty fine. And that happens and that's great. But it's not always like I said, judgment is imminent, and we all kind of have to accept that, especially when there are differences and there are visible differences. And it does suck, but again, I don't know because it comes off so shallow and because like I said, someone can look at me and be like, "Okay, you look fine. Like what's wrong?" But it's like I've had a long journey to get here.
Mm.
But there's someone who maybe has a lasting effect or something that's just more prominent and I don't know.
Okay.
I guess my closing thought is I wouldn't like you don't discount someone if they look different or they have a defect or the whatever.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely relate to you on that.
Makes sense.
There are like, I don't know, like there was like a stage, and let me know, like, I mean, I don't know if you relate to this, but there was like a stage when I was losing weight that like there was like a high and mighty stage, like when I lost like my first 40 pounds, and I was like, that's, like I tried so many times to lose weight growing up, and I never probably lost more than like 15 pounds. But when I was like successfully finally losing weight, like I hit this stage, and like I feel shitty about it now, but like it was all about like admitting it at the time. Or like I would like view other fat people, and then like that was like my motivation to keep going. Like, you know what I mean? Like it just seems like shitty, and like I don't necessarily know why I'm saying this right now, because actually, okay, so like when I finally got to a certain point when I lost all the weight and I accepted myself for being thin, I sort of understood the same thing that you're talking about, where like I got to the point where there are some things that I couldn't control anymore. Like I can't control like the shape of my nose or like my eyelashes or something like that. And so like there comes to a point where it's like shit. Like obviously losing weight was something you can control, but like it comes to a point where like you have to learn to accept yourself, or like you just will constantly live in this insatiable, changing of features. So I don't know, like, was there a point where like you hit where like that's when your compassion sort of came out, when you saw people who look different? Or like, because for me, like I had to hit that point where I realized that like this is gonna be like feeding a hungry ghost until like I hit it. So like when I hit that point, that's when I had like compassion for anyone who was like struggling with like substance abuse or being overweight. So very long-winded, but was there a point when your compassion came through, or did you always have compassion?
Are you asking if I ever felt a sense of superiority for like
So did you ever
accomplishments?
I mean, I might need to back up. Um did you catch yourself after the majority of your surgeries like judging people, and then did you ever catch yourself judging those people to where the point where you had a revelation where you're like, I should stop doing that based off of what I've been through?
Definitely when I was younger,
Okay.
but I've always been pretty compassionate for people being different growing up the way that I did. And I've always been very receptive to the fact that I am lucky. We had the money, we had the means, we had fantastic doctors, and not everybody has access to that. And I've always known that. So I've always had that thought in my head when I look at other people who, maybe they have a cleft, maybe they're an amputee. Like, when there's something different, it's like sometimes you can't fix it. You can't make it better. You can't treat it for whatever reason. You don't have the money, there's no good doctor around you. And that's just always what I keep in mind, is that I'm very, very lucky. Not everybody is as fortunate as I am. And that's what I always keep in mind. So when I
Okay.
do make those quick judgments, it's like, no, no, no. You had a silver spoon for quite a few years.
Hmm.
You know, like, stop that.
Okay. I felt like I've carried this out like an interview, and like usually these are supposed to be like free flowing conversations. So before I
You're
go
fine.
on, do you have like any questions for me, or have any like things that like you want to have like my take on?
When we were messaging earlier, that you had quickly thought of me
Mm-hmm.
when you were thinking of this podcast or an episode or whichever.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
When I went to college, I like also hated my first semester where I was home every single weekend, and I went to Connor Mamula had his own apartment, and so I went there like a lot. And one of the weekends I saw you, and that's when you had like, I would imagine like not the vast majority, but you had like a good chunk of your surgeries done. And so when I saw you, like I didn't recognize you. I was like, "Who's this girl?" And he's like, "That's Cassidy Emch." I'm like, "What?" I was like, her life must have changed. Like it had to have changed, because even when it comes down to like the world giving you feedback, like you move differently when you know how you look, and that's just the way it is. So I tell this to people when I wanted to make this podcast. Like it started when I went to Kepner's downtown Hudson. I think it was the winter of 2017, and I was talking to people, and I was like, and they were complimenting me on my weight loss, and I was like, you have like no idea who you're talking to. Like, and it wasn't even like in like a condescending way. It's like this person actually doesn't even know. Like I am nowhere near who I was last time I talked to you. And I'm sure it was the same thing for them. Like they were probably feeling the same thing. And so I was like, what way can I actually like have a conversation with someone to like fill them in, and like so they actually get an understanding of like what transformations I went through. Because like some people like transform a lot after college or after high school. I mean, and after college, obviously, but like, some people don't. And there's nothing wrong with that, because some people's lives don't demand them to transform. Like that's just the way it goes. So when I saw you, like I like, I was like thinking about podcast guests, and I was like just like racking my brain, and I was like, remember the one time where I saw Cassidy Emch at Connor's apartment in 2015? I was like, she looked great. And so I was like, okay, like let me go like see if I can find your account. And so I did. And so immediately I was like, okay, like there is the relationship between what I went through and then what you went through on some level. Obviously they're not the same. And I was just dying to talk to someone about what it's like to look not completely different, but like normal. Because I felt like I grew up and I wasn't normal. Like I had to like I had to compensate, but not in like a show offy way. Like I just had to like deploy other parts of my personality to make up for it, which I guess is compensation by definition. But yeah, I don't know, because there's middle school sucks for everyone, but there's also like the point where it's like you just feel so like claustrophobic and like trapped, but also like, you know, like isolated and everything, but at the same time exposed, and you're like, holy shit, this is like hell. So anyway, like I don't know, because I meet people nowadays, like you said, like they have no idea what you've been through. But for me it's like people, because like I don't have like a lot of people who lose weight quickly. Like I didn't lose weight quickly, it took me like 4 years, but like people's face, like they can have like semi saggy skin, and so that they can tell that like they lost weight. But for me, I don't have any loose skin because I lost it so slowly. So when I tell people that, like it was always my favorite thing to say, like my senior year for like 2 truths and a lie, like I would say like, oh, I lost this much weight. They'd be like, okay, well you definitely didn't lose that weight. And I was like, well,
Bet.
yeah. So I don't know. Like I think I answered your question, but that was the relation, because like I've like, this is gonna sound weird, but like I did feel that way like growing up too. And like it was kind of unspoken. I was like, I feel like Cassidy feels like the same way that I do, and like I feel like a cock actually saying that, because I could totally never relate to what you did or what you've been through. But yeah, so I don't know how that makes you feel actually. Like I'm curious how that makes you feel because yeah.
So first of all, I don't think I ever congratulated you on your weight loss. I thought I did, but I did not. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You look great. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Like genuinely, it's some people never make that journey, and I'm genuinely proud of you.
Thank you.
Second, it's a little confidence boost. Like, oh, she looks great. She doesn't even look the same. Thank you. I know I put in a lot of effort to not look the same. I appreciate it. Third, or see, whatever I've counted them as, I think it's interesting to hear your point of view on things from middle school, because when you're in middle school, you're like, oh, I'm the only one who feels this way. Life sucks. Everyone else is having a great time. And I always, you were quite often with a lot of popular kids. And I don't remember. I feel like you were. Anyway.
I was. I don't feel like I was ever like considered a popular kid, but I'd always mobbed around those kids because I was like, you guys do different shit. I want to be part of it. But yeah.
I remember you were always pretty funny. I mean, like, and I thought, like, I didn't think you were as big of an asshole as a lot of the other kids. Like, you had some good points. We said like hi a couple times, I think, and you weren't the worst person. So that's a compliment, given the city we grew up in. And seeing you as a person now, clearly you're great.
Thanks.
But as I was saying, you feel like you're the only one going through problems, and to hear from you, who always looked like you were having a great time, that you were struggling and dealing with a lot of similar things, I don't want to say it makes me happy, but it makes me feel less bad and less alone for past me. Because I always felt so bad for past me. And I'm sure you want to tell your past self, like, it's going to be okay. You'll be okay. And so knowing that someone that I thought was having a great time was not having a great time.
So wait, you got that impression from me just because just the way that I was goofy?
I mean, to be honest, anyone who hung around the popular kids, I'm like, they're having a great time there with the popular kids. And because I mean, I wasn't popular, but I had popular friends up until 7th grade when I was real depressed. So I guess I was just kind of goading my current friends for attention, and they were just like, look, we never liked you. I don't even know why I hung out with you. Like, blah, blah, blah. You're stupid. You only care. Like, you just want attention.
Girls are fucking demons, especially middle school girls.
They are. I'm still bitter about it. And I know I shouldn't be, but those girls literally messed me up for so long because we were close. We would hang out. We would have sleepovers. They would be like, Cassidy, in the hallway. And I'm like, yes. They're like, no, we never fucking liked you. And I'm like, I specifically remember we were texting. I was sitting in the front seat of my mom's Escalade, and we had just come back from dinner, and I'm sitting there desperately holding back my tears, thinking, we just have to get home. We just have to get home. I'll be fine. We just have to get home. And then we got home, and I cried into my pillow for like 4 hours.
Aw. Fuck.
But anyway.
Here's a question I was going to ask. Very random. What do you remember of Jake Toth?
Why, did something bad happen to him?
No.
I mean, he was like one of the skater kids that we all thought were, I don't know, I kind of thought he was an asshole, to be honest.
You thought Jake was
he may have been one of the nice ones.
I thought he was.
Maybe he was nice to you. So what was the question about Jake Toth? Like, why? What prompted this?
I have no idea. I was like, I wonder if Cassidy... First of all, I love Jake. Before we go, is there anything that you want to plug?
Follow me on Instagram. It's at Cassidy Emch. CassieEmch. I don't post that much right now, but I post a lot of stuff about my cat, and she's pretty cute.
Word.
So make me famous so that directors reach out to me.
Got you. Okay. If you made it this far, thank you very much. Peace.